Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Judgement Day with me, Marc Cairney, joined again with David Logue. He's going to bring a wee different spin to the show. He's going to ask the questions to me, brought to you on the community page by yourselves, and then maybe ask me a few follow-up questions. We thought we would try and change it. Last week was our first time doing it, David, and I felt like it was a wee bit different. I thought it gave a wee bit of a different perspective to me, just talking at the camera and just saying my end on the matter, and you provided a good back and forth, mate. How did you think it went last week? Did you like it?
I enjoyed it last week, mate. So much so that I'm back again. So I am looking forward to. I've scoured YouTube. I've looked at the comments from the community page, and there was a few comments, few questions to pick from, which I've selected from some from this week, and I kept some on the back burner that I thought would be good to wait and see how the Sunday's game panned out before I decided to ask you those questions. So I've had to slightly reword them. So please, those that have questions.
Well, as a bus, David, not everything goes to plan. It doesn't always show up, but not everything goes to plan on any bus. But that's just what it's all about. Just kind of evolve the show, and it doesn't have to be a question that's posted this morning or even last week. It could be a question that's been kind of archived that's maybe more relevant now. So that's what we're going to try and bring to the channel, is maybe a wee different kind of concept to what we see. And there's so many good projects. In fact, they're all good in their own way. So we thought we would just bring it a wee bit of a different look on it and try and find a different show in the already multiple different versions of podcasts out there. So I'm going to bring us out to the first question. I've not seen the questions this week at all. I promised David I wouldn't look at even the questions on the community page, because I wanted it to be a wee bit just totally not surprised, but just totally a question that's been flung at me and not have any kind of background knowledge on it. So
not allowing you to think about it, Mark. Not allowing you to think of your answer.
Thinking on my feet, mate. And that's what I like about it, David. That's what I like to try and get myself even a bit flustered. So on you go, mate.
Yes, that's it there. So here we go. We've got him in the hot seat, guys. We've got the judge standing in court. The advocate is ready to throw the questions at him. So here we go. This is the first question for you, Mark. It's from Chris M. So thank you, Chris M, for your question. Does the judge believe that the summer window is time to break the transfer record for a player? And are there any concerns about the interference in transfer plans from Peter Lawwell? That's from Chris M.
Well, thanks for the question, Chris. It's good to see you on the comments, and thanks for watching, buddy. I do believe we should start breaking new records. I mean, we can't be sitting every week hoping that Celtic break records with goals scored and points and things like that, and see all these new records that Angie's bringing to the club, and then look at 2001 and 2000 and think that the transfer fees paid then is the maximum we can pay just now. Now, I know we broke it with Julian and we broke it with Edouard, but even that, relatively, in Celtic's financial chasm, a gulf they've got now over Rangers, I think is quite moderate. I think Celtic can break their transfer budget this season, or their transfer record this season. I do believe that Celtic have got the money where we could spend probably our biggest ever summer transfer budget, and it's still going to hurt the club financially. Now, our last record showed there was £50 million in the bank. Some people want to kind of disbelieve that, but you can't hide money in the bank anymore when it comes to a club the size of Celtic. You've got to publish your accounts, and then the accounts said there was £50 million of available cash at any one moment and an overdraft facility. Celtic are doing it today, things like that. Also this season, we've guaranteed Champions League football and all the money it brings with it. So we can't just sit here, David, and look for the club to raise the bar a bit. Now, by raising the bar, I don't mean go for buying £3-4 million players, set a standard there and start buying £20 million players. I don't believe Celtic will do that. And to be quite honest with you, I don't believe Celtic should do that just now. I don't think it'd be quite fiscally sound for Celtic to be spending £20 million willy-nilly. It sets a precedent, and it sets a transfer value for a player who's linked with you, and it goes up £3 or £4 million the minute you're linked with them. So no, I don't think we should go down that road, but I think Celtic should start looking at, if a player's in Angie's eye and he's 15 million, he's 12, he's 13 million, why not go for it? Why is it okay to spend £3 million on 3-4 players, but the fault of Celtic spending 10, 12, 13, 14 million pound a player makes people's hair turns white? Because it shouldn't be that way, David. I mean, we're a big club. We pretend that we're a Champions League club and we've got all the structures to put a dent in the Champions League. Well, if that's the case, Guy Ange Postecoglou, a manager who we all back, we all think he's fantastic. If this is what he can do with a group of players that he's brought from Japan and brought from different parts of the world for 2, 3, 4, 5 million, all right, Jota and Carter Vickers, they are £6 million players that I think we could have sold the next morning for 15, to be quite honest with you. But if that's what he can do with guys worth 2, 3, 4 million, what can you do with guys that he thinks or he's sure is worth 8, 9, 10 million? Or as I say, 12, 13, 14? I'm not saying buy 4 or 5 of them, David, but I think if you want to take this team to the next level, you're going to have to spend a wee bit more than your usual £2.5 million players. I think you don't buy Arthur Johnson's for £2.5 million. We didn't get lucky with him. That was somebody who, I dare say, Ange scouted and his department scouted very well. Mm-hmm. But you can't keep on getting away with that, David, because other teams start noticing these wee gems. You know what I mean? There's teams in Celtic's wage brackets that just happen to be missing out on these players just now, and I think when Celtic want to go to the next level, that requires next level investment. And on the last part, I watched the first half of the football there, and Peter Lawwell, Michael Nicholson, and Ange Postecoglou popped up on the screen. And whenever I see Peter Lawwell, I get the fear. I still think he's got a very big influence at Celtic Park. And I don't think it'll be a surprise to anybody if he's probably involved in some level beyond what he's supposed to be.
Mark, I was scouring Twitter there. I've seen something this morning that really caught my eye, and obviously it's surrounding the Celtic tour of Japan and Korea. And a guy had listed off sort of a rough estimate of what the club would probably generate in income from the tours, and it was numbers like 8 million getting flung around there and 6 million here, and then apparent transfer for a possible transfer for Kieran Tierney to Newcastle or wherever it ends up. If he does leave Arsenal, there's a sell-on clause there. You've got your Frimpong sell-on clause if he moves this summer. You're already generating at the very least 30 million without even getting your Champions League money and any transfers that we, if we move anybody from our starting 11 in the summer. Mm-hmm. That's a huge amount that's a massive war chest to play with. So you'll bear that in mind and everything you've just said. What is your ideal start? And, what is the minimum? I know it's a difficult question to answer because you don't really know what you're getting for that price tag. We saw what we got for Barkas. We saw what we got for Agate at 5 million. But then we've seen what we get for 6 million when it comes to Jota and CCV. So is 6 million, is that the starting point? You want to start seeing money like that being like a minimum spend on a player that you think would help out our chances in the Champions League? 6 million minimum, or are you looking at an Edward 9 million plus?
Well, it's a good question, David, because we've all seen sometimes you can spend £4 million on Bernabei, but you can spend £2.5 million on Arthur Johnson. So sometimes the money doesn't always reflect the actual player's ability, but that's an anomaly. In football, it tends to be you get what you pay for the majority of the time, right? So I think if Celtic are going to look to improve what they've already got, we're going to be selling, I think, squad players. We might lose a player or two for the first 11. We can get into that if you want, David. But in terms of the actual team itself, if we want to get to the next level, Ange will know the players that we need, right? Whether that's some people's idea of a new goalkeeper or whether that's somebody who's going to maybe challenge Kyogo a bit more, or somebody maybe who's going to fill in, I think, the missing link to that front, to that team going forward, I think is somebody in the number 10 position. I think that's still missing for Celtic. I think if we can get somebody in there, I think it might look a bit different in Europe. I certainly feel like we can be dealing with seeing Awata play more, and hopefully that happens in the Champions League. But I think we're going to need to start spending in that bracket, David. See that 6, 7 plus, that gives you a higher chance of us progressing. Now, if I'm going to say this one thing, and this plays on a bit with the board, and I think every Celtic manager's got a shelf life. Gordon Strachan mentioned it. I think Martin Neil's actually mentioned it as well. And some people might think that Martin Neil maybe stayed a wee teensy bit longer than they should have, considering his last season's football was pretty poor. Anybody remembers that season well? Horrible to see the guy go, but it was coming to an end, David, especially when the board money backed him. Now, Angie's contract, as we know, is a 1 year rolling contract, right? So is it an Angie's head that his next big move might not be as far as away as what he thought it might be? Is it in the board's view that do we seriously back a guy to spend 30, 40 million for talk's sake here? Knowing that the players he's going to buy are so identical to one style of play that a new manager coming in might not be able to get a tune out of these players in the same way that Ange would get. And by that, I mean, you look at the players you've got, David, that team is just working so well. Every one of them is just working like a well-oiled machine. Does a Brendan Rodgers get the same tune out of their players? Does Ange get the same tune out of Brendan Rodgers' players? Do you know what I mean? Does Stratton get the same play out of O'Neill's team? You know what I mean? And I think that matters. I think if the board thinks that Ange might be 12, 18 months away from his next move, do they spend £30 million on this guy next season? It depends on the board's long-term and short-term vision. I think for me, if the board are on the same wavelength as the fans, which I hope they are, I don't believe they are, which I hope they are, I think there is no reason whatsoever why we shouldn't see a record-breaking transfer budget this season, because you've rhymed off money that I didn't even think about, David, there. Frimpong, Cairney possibly, South Korea and Japan tour. And then don't forget, David, we spoke about this in the chat, the Celtic shirts are going up £10 per shirt, reportedly. And we sell a lot of them. And we've also the new retro range, £100 a t-shirt and £50 a pair of shorts. Celtic are making a killing out of this. And that money, you can't hide it, mate. The matches is getting bigger and bigger and bigger with this pile of money. And so you need to spend it eventually.
The board, Mark, their argument could be to Ange, because we've been quite smug about our transfer dealings up till now in terms of like the players that we've brought in for the money that you could say, well, look, it's not about how much we spend, it's how clever we spend it. And, Ange is very good at being clever with his money. And then that could be the board. The board could potentially look at that and say, well, Ange, you don't really need to be spending 8, 9, 10 million pounds on the players, because we know that you've got this list of players that will fit your system for a budget 2.5 million, and we can see what you can get with that. They might be quite happy with that, and that's obviously that could be a concern. The other concern could be that, like you say, Ange has made it. He said to the media, "I don't think you understand how long I plan on being here." And obviously, maybe Ange needs to get the commitment from. The board needs the commitment from Ange, but it's going to allow them to play with that kind of money. But then the other question, Mark, the biggest question is, okay, the board are allowing Ange to go and spend a minimum of 9 million on a player, let's say, right? It's convincing this 9+ million player to come and play
in Scotland.
For me, I think that's the bigger obstacle.
No, I agree with you. I think there's actually a lot of truth behind that, because let's be honest, it's and take the money aside, take the wages aside. Let's just pretend Celtic can match an Ajax when it comes to wages, which we actually can. Seemingly our wage budget's higher than Ajax's, I read last year at some point. It's the quality of the league that matters, because we've seen players leave Celtic because international recognition. You know what I mean? We saw it even with Japan, with Kyogo and Hatate. They're getting more or less shunned because of the Scottish League. I think there's different reasons for that, but it is convincing a guy in that stature at the companies. But if we're seeing guys go down to the Championship for that kind of money, David, why not Celtic? I'm not saying Celtic, by the way, what I will say is I don't think Celtic should be looking at players who are fit for the Championship in England, because I don't think you get to the Champions League and compete with English Championship players. I really don't. I think there's a few gems out there. I think a few excel, and normally like your Tony and things like that. Your Tony, they move up the level and perform really well. And some others really don't. You know what I mean? And to be honest with you, there's more players come from England, English Premier League, and flop in Scotland than there is players come from English Premier League and excel in Scotland. There's maybe only a handful of players that I've seen come up from England and I thought have been absolute quality players. As the majority of them come up, we think this is a Farmers League and get surprised. Especially at Celtic or Rangers when you have to win every week. Coming from a Bournemouth is not very easy, but it's a difficult one, David, because you can't just sit there and say, we're Celtic, there's money on the table, do you want to come up? There's probably more to it. There's probably, if there's a World Cup coming up, or if there's, it could even be like, say, the geography. I mean, does a wag who lives in London want to move up to Glasgow? I mean, the things like that, you know what I'm saying? It's things like that.
There's a lot of factors, mate. There's
a lot of factors, mate. And I think playing for Celtic is a very big carrot for any player. I mean, anybody that pick up the phone and speak to a Joe Hart, I'm sure he'd tell you he's surprised at just how amazing it is to play for Celtic, mate. And it's a brilliant question because none of us know an individual's thoughts on the matter. But I tell you something, if there's one man out there that can sit there and suss a player out over a phone, we found out it's Ange Postecoglou. And I think if he thinks of getting any doubts of that matter, I think he'll move on to the next candidate. And that's more important to me because the goal he scored at Hampden summed up two teams for me. He had a team that were disconnected, disjointed and disinterested. He had a team that were all going for the one cause, fully focused. First of all, you had Carl McGregor on his heels, on his toes, to Mattavelli, who was on his toes. Maeda, who was on his toes for the free kick that wasn't given, and you had Jota on his toes. All going for the one thing. And you look across the Rangers side, and you had 4 players or 5 players pointing at each other, and a manager standing in the sidelines with his arms folded, blaming blaming Giovanni Van Bronckhorst and SpongeBob SquarePants. That's the difference, mate. It's a club player just totally different, and Ange can suss out players who will fit into that mindset. That was a good question. It led to a wee healthy debate there. So thanks for that, Chris. We're going to go to the next question, and hopefully it'll be as good as that. Thanks for sending that in, buddy.
Well, this might be a how would I put it? I don't want to say controversial, but it would be interesting to see what 3 names that you come up with. This is from San Fran Celtic.
Next one.
He wants you to name 3 starting team players. Now, bear that in mind, starting team players who will not cut it in the Champions League and should be replaced in the summer.
That's a good question.
Now, our strongest 11 was arguably played on Sunday there, Mark. So was that the start? That's his starting team. So anyone in that team that doesn't cut it in the Champions League?
It's a really tough question because you would have to bring in the new players and see who they're up against. If you had like a player who was that level above, for talking's sake, let's just say you bought a player who was a better left back than Taylor, for talking's sake, I would be measuring him against that person. But I don't see any obvious weak points in this Celtic team. Celtic as a squad, as a team of players on a match day, create spaces that are obviously a consequence of our style of play. So the areas we saw last season, the two various areas we saw last season were at fullback on the right hand side because of Juranovic, who's thankfully away, and the centre back pairing. But Jens and Starfelt started most of their games. In fact, I think Jens and Welsh, shudder to think, started at Madrid. So that's the 2 obvious areas. But Carter Vickers and Starfelt, I feel, have made a good partnership. But David, I still can't get away from the fact that I feel that defensive pairing is held together by Cameron Carter Vickers. I think Starfelt plays some really good games for Celtic. There's some games he's a colossus. He wins every heater. He clears his lines really well. But I just feel like I think Cameron Carter Vickers is probably the peak player we can buy now in terms of defensive defender. There's probably not many better defenders that play his position, even in the EPL. There's probably only a handful. That's how good I think this guy is. Starfelt's not at that level, which isn't a bad thing. But I think if one area that can be improved, I think even if Ange's being honest, he might, if he gets money for players, look to reinvest in somebody who's maybe at the same level as Cameron Carter-Vickers. That's not for me saying that that Starfelt isn't a good defender. I mean, we're going to get into our third season, and they two haven't lost a game yet together in the Scottish League. So they've went 2 full seasons without losing a game as a partnership. That's outstanding, and it's because it'll be at least in his third season before we see that. So I think that's an area that we could see. It's not obvious. I love Greg Taylor. I think he is a well capable left back. In fact, I think he is a player who can play in the Champions League. I think he's playing a type of role that's very modern, very kind of Celtic, very Celtic-ish. This inverted fullbacks, very Celtic-ish, but he's very rarely caught out the yards of space. I know with Van Veen done on my belter 2 weeks ago. I think he's been carrying him up for a while now, David. I think that guy's been injured for maybe about a third of this season, on and off, and I think he's been carrying something, mate. He's when he gets down now, he's doing for 3 or 4 minutes at a time, and that's normally a player that's carrying something. I think it's possible that that's an area they could improve in, but again, I'm not saying it's an area that I would choose to be improved on, but you could see that. I also feel like I don't think we've got a Champions League quality level striker yet. I think Kyogo is maybe his profile and the kind of normal Champions League striker. I don't think he's strong enough, mate. You know what I mean? And the amount of chances we missed last season, I think Celtic, I may be wrong here, Celtic have still created the most chances in the Champions League so far this season, and they went out in the first round. You know what I mean? And something like 73 chances or something they made.
Something like that.
And I love Kyogo, so if anybody's taking this point wrong, please don't. I think if Celtic keep him next season, I'll be the happiest guy in the stadium because I think he's a brilliant player. But I'm just the question was about 3 players that I think they should improve or could be improved on, or are not going to be at Champions League level. The 3 players I've mentioned, I think will do a job for Celtic in the Champions League, and they might even excel. So it's not a question that I've brought up here. I have to answer the question, and I think a proper Champions League striker. The guy's going to score 30 goals this season. He's phenomenal. I love the wee guy, but could we probably get a less clinical Scottish Premier League striker who will do a bit more in Europe? I think we probably could, but the sacrifice is we might get a guy who's maybe less mobile up front and maybe like a Samaras who'll maybe finish more.
I'm going to push back on that, right? So because I've been looking for somewhere where I could push back, and I think I found one, right? So you said there that you think that we could possibly look at a Scottish-based striker or a Scottish striker.
Oh, sorry, David. I didn't mean to see if I said Scottish. I meant like a. I don't know what sentence, but see if I said the word Scottish. Certainly no, not a Scottish base. What I meant was like a European type striker. You know what I mean? Like a big. I think the more European. You look at the
right. Okay, you mean more. You mean one that's
more athletic. So
okay.
You look at I think you look at the more successful teams in Europe, even the ones that are playing against us. We are Shakhtar Donetsk. They're normally a bit more. They're more physical than
I personally think we give. I think Kyogo if he gets another crack at starting in the Champions League next year, I think he takes those chances that he missed last year. I think
so,
he was lacking in confidence, and probably lacking in fitness. It's one of those ones where the Champions League maybe came a little bit too early for him this season. I think and also it was all condensed to do with the World Cup being halfway through the season. Games came around a lot quicker than they normally would. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. I think he's more than capable of being our Champions League striker. Given the benefit of the doubt, I think he can do it next year. I don't think we'll find another striker that's going to.
So yeah, David, I totally agree with you, and I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm trying to suggest he's not good enough because
no, that's not what you suggest. No.
I'm just answering a very difficult question. See if that was 3 squad players, I could probably name you 6, David. I could maybe name you 6 easy, right? Couldn't bother.
Yeah.
But it's because it's like, even the three that I've mentioned, I would still definitely say the three players can play for Celtic in the Champions League. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Kyogo plays 6 games next season in the Champions League and scores 2, 3, 4 goals. That wouldn't shock me.
I think he does. Look at his. I know the Champions League and the Europa League are afar. There is a jump in quality.
Yeah,
there definitely is. But we've seen him play in European ties against these other European teams, and he did the business. He did do the business. So I think lack of confidence played a massive part in the Champions League last year.
yeah.
I also think just sometimes you just need a bit of luck, and we really just didn't get any luck. We didn't get any rub of the green at all in the Champions League last year. I mean, you create your own luck, Mark. We know this. 73 chances or whatever it was, daft. We should be putting one away. Just
totally agree,
and then we look at, like you said, perhaps Starfelt. Maybe he's the one that we improve on, if possible. Very difficult to do that if you're looking at, like you said, the price tag that you pay for Carter Vickers. You're looking for a guy that's at some level of that. I think, like you said, they've not lost a game when they've played together for 2 seasons.
It'll be 3 seasons, David. It'll be 3 seasons.
Yeah. So I think so long as Carter Vickers is back from his 4-month layoff of obviously the operation, and that goes all well and he's back in training, and Starfelt doesn't pick up another injury, I think they will be our starting centre backs next year, and that's the real test. It's like, how do you almost go, well, how can you swap those two when they haven't lost a game together domestically? We can only challenge. That is the next step up, and we've got to allow them to see how they get on. So that's a very difficult. It's a difficult question to stand for Celtic.
I think I've been shafted, mate. I think I've been shafted.
You have been shafted. I know, but I thought
because that was actually it's actually a really good question, San Fran. Thanks for putting it in. It's actually a really good question because this team is probably so well put together that I think no matter what 3 players I gave the answer there to, I would upset somebody.
Oh, aye. Everyone will have a different answer to everyone.
Because if I say Jota, David, you'd say to me, Mark, how can you improve on him? And you're probably right, but I've not got the answer on that. And they said, Hatata, you're not going to improve him at Celtic. You're just no, right? And then you can't improve me, well, you can probably improve McGregor, but are we going to afford £50 million for somebody to come in and replace McGregor? I never know. And I was just like, for me, the obvious ones that. So I'm looking at a season, right? And for me, the obvious flaws this season for me. This is how I quantified my answer there. The 3 obvious flaws for me this season was the space left at right back, our centre backs no concentrating, and our conversion rate with goals. And that's how I quantified my answer. The 3 players I mentioned, if they are still at Celtic next season, I will be delighted. I will be delighted. I still think Carter Vickers holds that centre half pairing together. But that doesn't mean you don't need to have sometimes you need a Henrik Larsson to make a Chris Sutton. You need a Chris Sutton to make a Henrik Larsson. Some people just make each other look better and play better. So it's a dirty question, San Fran. It's probably one we could probably spend nearly a full show on because it's a really good question. And in fact, if you got something similar tomorrow, bring up one TNF. We can chew the bones after that. It's a really good question. We'll move on to it. Well, in fact, so you go first.
Just quickly, just before we do, right, I think the fairest way to kind of almost underline your answer there, right, would be if you were to show the stats, right, of all our European games from this season and show it to a neutral that's never didn't watch any of the games and say, what do you reckon Celtic should improve on? They go, well, you conceded too many goals, you didn't score enough. So, I mean, right off the bat, you look at your defence and you look at your striker. So I think your answer is perfectly like, it's on paper, that's what you would look at. But it's a very difficult question because...
And then showing the goals. Because if you showed them the goals, you'd say, well, right back's a problem. But Arthur Johnson's, I think you've got to give that guy a chance at the Champions League because he looks like he could play that level. I think, no bother. My only thing was, okay, right, I'm happy with him. I love Greg Taylor. Trust me, I said a long time ago, maybe 3 years ago, that I liked this guy before most people did. But I was just thinking if you had to improve one area of the fallback position, maybe he's just the one. Doesn't mean that I want that to happen, or I think it should. But good question, mate. And
good question, We'll move on.
We'll move on to the next one, David. Make it a bit more easier than that. Don't tell me that to name my favourite sister or something.
Well, funnily enough, that's Right, we're sitting on half an hour. We're trying to keep the show a little bit more condensed.
No, no, sorry, mate, that's me.
So here we go. Right, I'm going to give you a wee Davy Logue special. I've written this one out myself because I thought, right, I wanted to do a wee bonus question, and we're running.
Are you a subscriber, David? Before I answer it, I don't want to be.
I'm trying to get somebody to gift me one because I'm a tight ass. Right, okay, so it's a two-parter, right? I'm just going to throw it out to you, okay? With a record amount of managerial sackings this season in the EPL, how attractive is a move to the EPL for Ange? And do you see him looking at jobs down there despite the lack of time given to them? Or does the millions outweigh the risk of damage to personal pride and reputation?
Well,
that's a mouthful, mate. It's a mouthful, mate.
It's as a mouth. No, and the two of them kind of go hand in hand. I think if Ange was to look at maybe, I'd probably say, even my knowledge of the EPL, I'd say about 80% of the teams down there don't give you time. If you've no clicked within 3 months, you're in trouble. No matter where you're at, you could be at Man U or you could be at Southampton. See, if you've not clicked, the players don't buy into you, you're out the fucking door. And the good thing about Ange is, and it's probably the bad thing about Ange, see, because he's so specific in what he wants, when it clicks, it is stupendous. See, when that clicks, see if he's at Real Madrid and he clicks with his knowledge and how his philosophy and football players and how he wants them to play, they will be the dominant force. There's no doubt in my mind, if he's at a club at that level, they would be unstoppable. He's just like Pep Guardiola for Barcelona. I feel like he could date somebody with a lot of money, but you don't get that in England, mate. You don't get into your second season. We in Scotland. It took him 7 games to turn it around. I spoke to Bhoycie Bus the other day there. He took him 7 games to change Celtic. To turn around fucking 17 players. It took the guy 7 games to fix Celtic all by himself with Gavin Strachan and John Kennedy. That's how good this guy is, right? It takes longer than that in England. I think the gap's just too big between the very good teams and the good teams and the fucking elite. So he knows that himself, David. So he would be very picky in the teams he wants to go to. But on the flip side, if you're talking about, for talking sake, we know teams like Chelsea sack their managers, and I actually read that when a Chelsea manager gets his interview for a job, they discuss his sacking payoff in the same meeting, which is bonkers, but I heard that's what happens. Your payoff is done the same day. And when you're talking guaranteed minimum, it's something like 20-30 million pound, mate. That changes your Grand Lane's lifestyle, mate. That's money that you can't even quantify, you know what I mean? And I think that's got to be down to a human level. I think if you get, I spoke to this before, if you get back to your wife and says, look, I get an offer there off somebody in England, it's £30 million, but I think I can turn this Celtic team into a quarter finalist, say the Europa League next year. I think she will hit the head by a brush. I think nobody goes out to their wife and says about that kind of money. The Celtic there's not many clubs in world football that can offer you what Celtic can offer you. But unfortunately, Celtic can't offer you what a lot of teams in football can offer you, and that's money. Celtic can give you a good lifestyle, maybe £1 million a year, with about 2.5 million or roughly, it was what Brendan Rodgers was on. Celtic should break that. Celtic should say, look, 2023, do you know what? In England, you'd be getting 150 grand a week. We can't give you that, but we can give you 60. If you want to stay here, we can give you 60. Give you a 5-year contract. We'll trust you that much that, do you know what? We will guarantee you whatever that money could be, David, 15 million, whatever that is, quickly putting my head there. But
Mark, I'll put it in the perspective. And by the way, I'm asking the question, right? Because
that's fine.
Because I'm not, and in no way am I trying to push Ange out the door. But the question, his name is constantly being mentioned at clubs to the point that even TalkSport are bringing him up for Chelsea. He's not going unnoticed, right? And I think fans are now at the point where, like, unless this guy signs a contract, we are at Ange's mercy of when he decides to go. The question I'm asking is, because of such a madhouse it is, does the the risk of your reputation that he's built over 25 years, that is a huge risk to take on that reputation that he's built for the millions. Is the millions worth
Well,
the risk
David,
in
see
building a
England.
reputation? And I don't think for Ange that it is. But to put in perspective, because you're chucking numbers, right? Sam Allardyce was given the job at Leeds today. He's got 4 games to save Leeds. He is going to be paid apparently £500,000 for 4 games. And if he keeps Leeds up, he will be given a £2.5 million bonus.
£3 million for a month's work.
£500,000 for 4 games and a 2.5 million if he keeps them up. That's the money you're talking here.
But see that man's name, David, is going to sum up my next point, or my answer to that is a very, very average English manager who's been sacked 7 times can still get another job. I don't mean English, I'm talking about an English, a manager who's in amongst that pool of managers.
Amongst the English games, yeah.
So if you go down there, we've seen managers go down there like Lampard. He shouldn't have got the Chelsea job. He went to Derby. He's went back to Chelsea. I wouldn't be shocked after this season he ends up at a Wolves or he ends up at a fucking Crystal Palace. It wouldn't shock me. So could he go down there to like a Villas-Boas, get flopped at Spurs, I think it was, or Chelsea, sorry, in Spurs. He's still got another job, big job. So if he went down there with a reputation at Celtic and got a for talking to, let's just say, a top 8 team or a top 10 team, his name all of a sudden becomes a bit sexy. You know what I mean? It becomes, even if he was to lose his job and get sacked or whatever, there'll be groups of chairmen that will say, I like what that guy did there. He just didn't get A, B, and C. You know what it's like, Dave. We all make reasons and excuses, and most managers are good at one thing, they just don't get time, budget, or the players to back them. And normally it ends up with them getting sacked. That guy is more than capable of turning heads, even with a team that might not be successful in the park. We've saw guys like Mick McCarthy. I mean, if you want to get relegated, hire Mick McCarthy. If you want to get promoted to the Premier League, hire Mick McCarthy. But he'll get jobs until the day he retires. And the same in England, I think, if you get down there and play one full season with a team, be broadly successful in terms of like turning heads and the rest of it, you'll get a job for 20 years on and off. I mean, that Hodgson, for talking's sake, I guarantee if he made one phone call with tomorrow, he'd be back in the eyesight at chairman within next season starting. I think he'd still be getting quoted for bottom 7, bottom 8 jobs.
He's back at Crystal Palace. I don't know if you know, he's back at Crystal Palace.
I don't know that, mate. There you go. I mean, that didn't surprise me.
They sacked Vieira, who replaced Hodgson because he'd retired, and they've got back in. And to be fair, he's actually their problem was they weren't scoring enough goals.
He's taking him up. He will take that team up, definitely.
He's banging the goals again. I mean, Edward's still not hitting the back of the net, but
no surprise, mate. I made a bet on my dad last year that I won. No surprise with that. I said when they get 8 goals if he included penalties and 5 a foot. I won that bet. I didn't rate him at all, but there you go. I'm due to win a second bet this year with my head. I hope I lose it right enough. But anyway, but see, that's the thing, David. Like, I think money in England is mythical because it all gets swallowed in. Crystal Palace Bolton £5 million for their manager, and then they buy a player for fucking Chelsea reserves. It all just swallows around into the size of the team. England are very clever at that. They very rarely spend hundreds of millions of pounds on foreign imports. A team will spend that on one player, you'll get £8 million, but majority is spent within the country itself, and they're pretty good at keeping money together. And unless I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong with that. This is it, mate. I think once you're in England, you find yourself in that window, and he would know if he was looking at it. If you were looking at test case scenarios, you would know that if you do a mediocre job in England, you're still going to be in the window for other chairmen and other directors. And I do say that Ange Postecoglou would do a good enough job. None of us two want to push him out. It's only a question posed to me by yourself, and it was a good question. I think I'll take Ange at his word that he will surprise us all about how long he's going to be here for.
I genuinely believe that, mate. I might come across totally naive here, and it's like, oh, you're getting so.
No, it's not naive.
But I don't think he's going to. I generally don't think it's an attractive enough proposition unless a top six club, unless it's a top six club, I don't see Ange seeing any reason to leave Celtic for a Crystal Palace, a Leeds, a Southampton, a Bournemouth, any of the guys.
Yeah.
I don't see it. If a Manchester City or a Man United or a Spurs maybe or a Chelsea, yeah, I'd be worried. They were the clubs that would make me go. I'd start sweating and going, I honestly believe he would do a good job down there, and I would start sweating. But I don't see it happening anytime soon.
I wouldn't start sweating. As soon as that happens, you just stop sweating. You just look at who's got to be replaced them, because it wouldn't be a question. It would be what time's the next flight. It wouldn't even be a question about if it does or if it doesn't. It will not be like that. It'll be a case of, right, who's next in line. And do you know what? This will only happen if Celtic are more successful. So it's a good thing for Celtic. And every player's got a timeline, every manager's got a shelf life, and that's just football, that's life. And eventually that'll come to an end. I'm just hoping that the lessons that this guy's got to teach us will be here for a long time, and how football should be played. I think, before we go, I'm just going to say this one thing. I think Ange Postecoglou will be that successful at Celtic and bring a brand of football that's so pleasing on the eye that no matter how successful the next Celtic manager is, Celtic fans won't see it for the success it will be, because we will never see a team that will be working as hard and be more together than this Celtic team, because this is something special. We should all enjoy it for how long it lasts, and just be thankful that this guy came to Celtic, and God bless him for coming. And listen, that's the end of the show. Like and subscribe, send it to your mates to watch if they've not watched it yet. Don't forget to podpontypiesports.com, 12.5% for Bus 1888. Brilliant pies. Get the kebab pie, put some cheese on it like Steve O'Mac does. Enjoy it. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. We'll get TNF Thursday, and we'll get Phil's Bustalgia on Friday. We've got our usual shows on Saturday post-match, and Sunday for the Blether, I think, as well, and maybe even a championship winning special. So from myself and David, thanks very much for watching. Take care, guys. Mona Celtic. Hail, hail.
See you later, guys.